Summertime and the living's easy for the LBC. Summertime and the living's easy for the LBC. Sublime.
Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Salvati.
Doobie-doobie-doo. Happy Friday, guys. Welcome. I hope you're excited and ready for the weekend. I know that I am. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. Welcome back, guys. It's been a long time, eh? Not really. Not really. I want to start off by giving shout outs to people in the chat. But first, I do want to remind you, tomorrow, RBN Labor Organizing Summit. Don't miss it. It starts at 10 a.m. Eastern Time from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. The headliners are Shama Sawant, Chris Smalls, and Dr. Jill Stein. We're going to have on different labor activists as well as Teamsters will be there, UPS Teamsters. You're going to see a lot tomorrow, and you're going to hear more about these strikes. I believe we also may have some footage on the ground, if I remember correctly. I think CJ is going to try to go out and get some footage on the ground of the actor strike or the LA hotel strike. So don't miss that tomorrow. That is going to be the bombs. All right. I want to go ahead and start off by giving shout outs to people in the chat. What's up, guys? What's going on? Shout out to Dr. Nick says, hi, everybody. Greetings, Miguel says, happy Friday. Peace. Shout out to Hannah says, Cube and Tucker. Yeah. I was shocked too. Well, we're going to talk about that tonight. Shout out to Robin, who's a Sabby member, said, just got paid Friday night. Let's do this. I forget who sings that song. I know NSYNC remade that song on that No Strings Attached album. That album was pretty based, actually. I know some guys who like that album too, and they were just like, not gonna lie. Bye is kind of legit. Just got paid Friday night. What is up? Eric Gray says, hey, everybody. And Sabby, what are your predictions for the Patriots win-loss record for this upcoming football season? I'm going to say 9 wins, and I think I'm being generous. We'll see how things go. We'll see. We're having some issues over there in Foxborough land. Shout out to Natalie, who is a Sabby member, says, hey, everybody. What's going on? Rodrigo says, I hope we can hold Cornel West to the same standard on the pandemic as we do RFK on Israel. Yeah, we can't talk about that on here. Everybody keeps emailing me and messaging me about that. You guys know we cannot talk about that on YouTube. That's the problem. So that would have to be a separate interview off of this platform, only on Rumble and Rockfin. We actually got 2 strikes over at RBN because we were talking about one of them. We didn't even talk about it. CJ just played a video, but because we even talked about that. So bigger channels can get away with this, by the way. They have a YouTube representative. So they have someone they can call if they get a strike or a video flag and say, hey, can you fix this? And it can get turned around just like that. Smaller channels, not so much. Shout out to Karen. Hi, Lawrence Johnson. What's going on? Gamer says hello. Greetings, Mastermind Hour says Sam Bankman-Fried. I like the play on words there. What's going on? Sean says you're. Shout out to Miguel H. I think this is a different Miguel. Says doobie doobie do. What's going on? Jay says, hey, everyone. Happy Friday. Shout out to Rick says, hey, y'all. What's going on? Crazy Boy says, hey, y'all. I made another love show. Winning. Interesting. What's going on? Baza says, I'm feeling some kind of way. I feel you, Baza. I don't know what way you're feeling, but I feel you. Shout out to Jeffrey says the coof came from a Labby Labs. Shout out to ACAB says, hey, everyone. Greetings, Ravina, who's a Sabby member, says hello to Gamer. Shout out to Carrie says, if we get U.S. citizen-owned utilities and resources, we can end poverty and fix reparations now. This is true. This is true. I highly approve that. Shout out to Venti Cafe says, fire, Sabby, solidarity. Greetings, Allie says, hi, Sabby and everyone. Shout out to Eric T. Red, who's a Sabby member, says, Friday is the day. Shout out to Ben, also a Sabby member, says, doobie doobie doo. What's going on? Eric says, what's up, my badass post-duopolist? That's pretty lit. I like that. What's up? Shout out to, I'm gonna make sure I don't skip anybody. Shout out to Sherry, who's a Sabby member, says hello all. What's going on? Dana says, I'm really excited and you just can't hide it. I'm so excited and I just can't hide it. Shout out to Sean Miller, says LFG RBN. What's going on? Samuel says RBN for life, son. I haven't heard someone say that for a while. For life, son. They usually say it just like that. Shout out to Hugo, who's a Sabby member, says, hello, everyone. Greetings, Chris says, hello, hello. Shout out to Colin. Roach says, blessings, flow, Sabby Sabs. I am following you from Barbados. Greetings and welcome. Love it, love it. I hope you're having a great summer out there. The water is beautiful. Very, very pretty. Shout out to New Sheep, says Backstreet Boys greater than NSYNC. Ho, 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 ho. I stepped on some toes. Yes, Mr. Eby, what's up? Says Johnny Kemp. That's who sings that song. Just got paid. Friday night, party hopping, feeling right, booty shaking. Eric says the Patriots win-loss will be 10-6. We'll see, guys. We'll see. I'm liking these predictions. Shout out to Anthony, sends a smile. Greetings, Wary, says, hey, everybody. Cecily says, hi, Sabby, love to all in the chat. Like and share. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. I want to give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. Sabby patrons, assemble. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, Sabbies, and of course, members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a shout out to a new Sabby patron. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for James Arkazuski. What's up? Thank you guys so much for your support. I'm a little bit silly tonight. I don't know why. I think because it's Friday. I think that's what it is, right? Friday. Okay, what are we talking about tonight? Let's go ahead and show that beautiful thumbnail and dive right in. Just got paid. Friday night. See, now you guys got the song in my head. Booty shaking. Tonight, we are discussing Ice Cube teaches Tucker. Very in-depth conversation there. Ice Cube is already getting criticism from many people on social media about just simply talking with Tucker Carlson. But I think you need to hear some of the things that were said during that discussion, especially for those of you who do not have Twitter accounts and you're not on Twitter. That is where the interview does exist. We're also going to discuss Hunter Biden denied. Oh, Hunter Biden did not get the response that he thought that he was going to get in reference to his particular case. We're going to dive into that story. I'm also going to discuss the RFK Jr. town hall that was on Fox News. I'm not sure if everyone saw that, but that did happen. It doesn't seem like it was publicized as much because most people I talked to said they didn't even know there was another town hall. So, and we're also going to discuss Sam Bankman-Fried alert. Yes, this dude is back in the news, and we're going to dive into that story. And we're also going to finish those Tennessee ballot measures. But first, let's dive into our first story here. Sam Bankman. I don't know if you remember this story. I covered it a while back, and it's kind of been cricket since then, but he is back in the news. If you remember, Sam Bankman was the gentleman who owned FTX. Now, this was just another version of crypto. A lot of people apparently had invested in FTX, and this company lost, billions of dollars overnight. So a lot of people were angry with Sam. People were like, Sam, I want my money back. Things like that. If you don't remember, let's go back and have a quick recap of how we got here. And then I'm going to tell you the new update in reference to his criminal charges. Let's go ahead and dive in here.
He was once hailed as the king of crypto, but today Sam Bankman-Fried, founder and former CEO of crypto exchange FTX, is facing criminal indictments and a wave of civil complaints.
Bankman-Fried and his co-conspirators stole billions of dollars from FTX customers. He used that money for his personal benefit.
Bankman-Fried, arrested last night in the Bahamas, faces 8 criminal charges in the U.S. Authorities alleging he defrauded investors by funneling customers' money into his own hedge fund behind their backs. As a result, they say $8 billion have gone missing.
This committee will not stop until we uncover the full truth behind the collapse of FTX.
In Washington today, a congressional hearing on FTX's collapse following what amounted to a run on the bank last month. Bankman-Fried, who was expected to testify, was instead making his first court appearance in the Bahamas.
There was no corporate controls, no corporate oversight.
FTX's new CEO, John Ray, led energy giant Enron through bankruptcy after its collapse. Today, appearing before Congress, he ripped into Bankman-Fried's management.
This is just taking money from customers and using it for your own purpose. Not sophisticated at all. This is.
And another thing I want to mention here too, just in case you may have forgotten, remember when we talk about the customers, it wasn't just people who were wealthy and just like to dabble in crypto. It was also just everyday people that took a chance investing into this company. So just keep that in mind too. There were a couple of videos where there were some people said like they lost everything. So just keep that in mind when you hear what has happened now with Sam.
Just plain old embezzlement.
At its peak, FTX had 2.7 million users in the U.S., and superstar celebrities were promoting the company.
You know what? I'm in.
Bankman-Fried was also donating tens of millions of dollars to political campaigns, including President Biden's 2020 White House bid. But today's allegations say that money actually belonged to customers. The White House.
Hold on to that piece. That piece is very important. Donating money to the Democratic Party. Now, I covered that when this story first broke, but that's very important when you understand what has recently been announced in reference to the charges that are against him. So if that money belonged to customers, he basically stole money from those customers to donate to politicians. Why are all these crypto dudes all of a sudden getting invested into politicians? This is becoming more common now, right? I was talking just on RBN an hour ago about David Sachs, who's also one of those crypto dudes, but he's a billionaire investing in politicians like Ron DeSantis and politicians like RFK Jr. What is happening here? Why are they so invested in politics now? Let's continue.
saying due to the Hatch Act, it could not answer questions of whether or not the president would return the donations.
And all of this dirty money was used in service of Bankman-Fried's desire to buy bipartisan influence and impact the direction of public policy in Washington.
Buying politicians and buying policy. Now, this is nothing new. This has been going on for a long time. We have corporations that do this as well. You have to go back to this case, the ruling from the Supreme Court. In 2010, the Supreme Court made a ruling that it is actually legal for corporations to be considered people, and they are entitled to buy politicians. So when we talk about getting money out of politics, you have to go all the way back to that ruling from the Supreme Court and all the way back to when super PACs first started or when PACs first started. We didn't always have PACs and super PACs. But again, it's not just him doing this. Corporations have been doing this for years, but they are protected by the Supreme Court. What is not protected by the Supreme Court is for him to take customer money from FTX and use that money to donate to politicians. That is not protected by the Supreme Court.
In a statement today, his lawyer said Mr. Bankman-Fried is reviewing the charges with his legal team and considering all of his legal options.
We messed up big.
Before his arrest, Bankman-Fried took part in a whirlwind media tour defending himself.
There are things I would give anything to be able to do over again. I didn't ever try to commit fraud on anyone.
Kate Rooney joins me now. Kate, Bankman-Fried, as you noted, was arrested in the Bahamas. What happens next?
So, Lester, the United States has asked for extradition to New York, but Bankman-Fried's legal team plans to fight the request. His application for bail has been denied, and he'll remain in a Bahamian jail. His next court appearance for arguments over extradition is scheduled for February 8th.
Okay, so that was just to remind you where we came from. And now we're going to take a look at where we are now. There was a breaking news in reference to his particular case. And if you have not heard this, hold on to your seat, because you are not going to be happy with this information, because the DOJ has decided to drop campaign finance charges against Sam Bankman-Fried. I kid you not. Now, remember, what did they just say in that clip? He took money from customers and donated to politicians. This charge is being dropped. Let's go on a little bit here. There he is. Federal prosecutors pursuing the criminal case against cryptocurrency mogul Sam Bankman-Fried said on Wednesday that they were dropping a charge that he violated campaign finance rules. Mr. Bankman-Fried was charged with fraud and campaign finance violations in December after the sudden collapse of his company, the cryptocurrency exchange FTX. He was quickly extradited to the U.S. from the Bahamas, where FTX is based. But in a court filing on Wednesday, the prosecutor said the Bahamas had informed them that the nation's government had not intended to extradite Mr. Bankman-Fried on the campaign finance charge. They made a mistake, apparently. Okay. In keeping with its treaty obligations to the Bahamas, the government does not intend to proceed to trial on the campaign contributions count. The removal of the charge is a victory for Mr. Bankman-Fried's legal team, which had argued that the U.S. mishandled the extradition process, and it follows the prosecution's decision in June to proceed to a trial in October without pursuing 5 other charges that were added to Mr. Bankman-Fried's indictment in the weeks after his extradition. What to know about the collapse of FTX? The now bankrupt company was one of the world's largest crypto exchanges. It enabled customers to trade digital currencies for other digital currencies or traditional money. It also had a native crypto known as FTT. The company, based in the Bahamas, built its business on risky trading options that were not legal in the United States. Thus, you see why it was based in the Bahamas. Now, I want to say something before we continue to go on here with this article, because obviously there's something that really needs to be pointed out here. Do you see how rich people can get away with crime? See how he was able to just have that charge dropped when there was already proof that he took people's money and donated to politicians? Rich people can get away with crime. They can. Look how they just walk away. Look at this. We'll get to the Hunter Biden story in just a second, but look at all these years. The Hunter Biden case, the Hunter Biden laptop. Hunter Biden's just been walking around the past couple of years living his best life. And they're just now bringing him in on certain charges, and not even the charges that I would add that he really needs to be brought in on. This is what happens when you have money, because the justice system works for people who have money. People who don't have money are in jail. People who don't have money to pay the bail bond to get out of jail. Some of the people sitting in jail are not there necessarily because they're guilty. Some of them are sitting there because they don't have the money to pay for bail. Or they took a plea bargain just to get it over with. We have to remember this idea that you have a right to a trial by jury. They don't say how fast this is supposed to work. Not everybody gets a trial. In fact, a lot of these cases don't get a trial. So what people will often do is they'll accept the plea deal so they can just get this over with. But not rich people. Rich people can get away with it. Now let's go on. The authorities have said Mr. Bankman-Fried and others at FTX used customer deposits to make $90 million in campaign contributions to some 300 political candidates or political action committees. That's PACs. Now, how is this an error? 300? I could understand if it was one candidate. Oh, we made a mistake. He actually don't take that money and donate to that one candidate. That was actually something else. But 300? And they dropped these charges? Months ago, prosecutors and bankruptcy lawyers for FTX began asking recipients of those donations to return them. A spokeswoman for Mr. Bankman-Fried declined to comment. A spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, which is prosecuting the case, did not respond to a request for comment. Of course they didn't. In total, Mr. Bankman-Fried is now set to face 7 charges at his trial in October, including accusations that he defrauded customers and lenders of FTX. Prosecutors have argued that he orchestrated a sweeping fraud, siphoning billions of dollars that customers had deposited with FTX to finance campaign contributions, charitable donations, and real estate purchases. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say something. I'm going to make a prediction. Don't be surprised if he actually gets off on all of these charges. Don't be surprised. He has the money and the resources to have the best attorney, the best legal team. And again, he's rich. He already got one charge dropped. Don't be surprised if he gets off on all these charges, or maybe some of them, and then he may have to make some type of plea deal for the other ones. Maybe you may have to do community service. But don't be surprised if this guy does not actually serve hardcore prison time for what he has done. By the way, this is, from what I remember, this is a felony. And just like that, he'll get his life back. Whereas other people who may have a felony charge, but they have no money and no resources, get out of jail and can't restart their life. He'll be fine. One more piece here. Prosecutors are planning a second trial on the 5 charges that were withdrawn in June, including an accusation that Mr. Bankman-Fried bribed a foreign government. They say they had to postpone a trial on those counts while litigation over the extradition unfolded in the Bahamas. Now, I want to show you something else. Wall Street Apes, this account on Twitter, they had receipts. You see, because they remembered that he actually did do this. Sam Bankman-Fried didn't just give $300K to House committee members investigating him. if you are wondering why Kevin McCarthy isn't doing anything like impeaching Merrick Garland, it's because he's in on it. McCarthy received millions. McConnell received millions. So in other words, he was donating not just to Democrats, apparently. Always goes back to the money, you guys. The whole uniparty is in on the take. The entire system is corrupt to its core. All of our selected officials are laundering out hard-earned tax dollars back to themselves and did so with FTX. Where is the motion to vacate? Both Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland would be long gone if we didn't have a controlled opposition Republican majority Congress robbing us blind. But no, Trump and Mar-a-Lago are trending. So he brings up a good point here. And basically what he's telling you is that Trump and Mar-a-Lago are a distraction when you have politicians right there in the House basically they took these campaign donations from Sam and nothing seems to be getting done. Now I want to zoom in because I want to show you the receipt. So he came with receipts. Congressional, I don't know if you can see. Okay. Congressional Leadership Fund. If I click on it, it makes it smaller. But I just want to show you Schedule A itemized receipts. Congressional Leadership Fund. Amount of each recipient this period. So you can see the dollar amount there. And then it says name of employer, FTX Digital Markets. Name of committee, Senate Leadership Fund. Name of individual, Valero Services, Inc. And then there's the contribution right there. I mean, this is all here, guys. Look, there's other names. Look, another name that's mentioned, Ryan Salami, Cox Operating LLC, Altria Client Services LLC. If you look over here, we have Valero Services, John Childs, Ryan Salami again. And you see the donations are here. FTX Digital Markets. And there's the dollar amount. So if they can pull up the receipts, that's Wall Street Apes. If they can pull up those receipts, that means Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, all the rest of them can pull up those receipts as well. Now I want to show you another thing because this is really interesting too. Now that account actually retweeted Tara Bull. The Department of Justice dropped the campaign finance charge against Sam Bankman-Fried. Our two-tier justice system at work. Remember when Sam Bankman-Fried gave $300K to House committee members investigating him, including Maxine Waters. So here we have a conflict of interest. Why was Maxine Waters allowed to be a part of the investigating committee when she's one of the politicians that he contributed to? Was this even a real investigation? Of course, Maxine is going to make sure she protects herself. Here's the photos. This is very telling. Like I told you, look, he's cozy with them. Cozy. They protect this guy. This is a mess. And even if you look at some of the comments, if I go back, we go back to because he retweeted Tara. So if you go back, I don't know, this guy is, I'm America's last best hope for freedom. Apparently he's running for president too. All are laughing. This is crazy. I wrote today about the efforts of big firms like BlackRock and US regulators to domesticate crypto, reduce its ability to compete with the US dollar. I'm super curious if we ever get the chance to see behind the curtain. In some ways, the FTX collapse created a pretext for the more intense regulatory scrutiny I discussed in today's article. So that's coming from Sasha Breger. DJT says, well, that's disturbing. The U.S. is now more corrupt than any single dictator they ever bought. And now listen to this. When this story broke, I told you that, watch, they're going to try to use this as an excuse to regulate crypto now. And you see them moving more in that direction. They're all corrupt. All of them. By the way, that's bipartisan. So you have Maxine Waters, you have Mitch McConnell, and you have Kevin McCarthy. That's bipartisan. They don't really care about partisan lines when it comes to money. But we'll keep an eye on this story, and I'll let you know if they drop any more charges. I will let you know. Shout out to ACAB for becoming a Sabby member. Give ACAB a big whoop whoop. Lisa says the Chargers better not break my heart like the Padres are right now. Oh, good luck with that one, Lisa. Sebastian says, look at the way the Dems are protecting this guy. It's gross. Yeah. Both sides protecting him. Oz says the Biden and Justice Department. Yeah. They're all benefiting from it. Very interesting. Okay. I want to get to our next story. Speaking of corruption, I do have an update in reference to the Hunter Biden story that I covered a couple of days ago. Now, we're going to start with the claim that Donald Trump made during the debates that Joe Biden did have business dealings in China. I want to take you back to that moment. Let's go back there first, and then we will walk our way to present day. Simon Ataba, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he is one of the White House correspondents, or actually White House journalists. He's always there. He's the one that Karine doesn't like to call on because he asks questions that she doesn't want to have to answer. But I want to take you back to this particular video. Now, Simon said, let me go up here. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Simon said, exposed during the 2020 presidential debate between candidate Joe Biden and President Donald Trump, Biden claimed he and his family never received a penny from China. But Hunter Biden admitted in court this week that he received over $600,000 from a Chinese company with ties to the CCP, contradicting President Biden's previous statement. So let's go back, guys, just in case you forgot.
Vice President Biden, you may respond. 30 seconds. And then I do want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned that this president paid 50 times the tax in China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever.
So it is possible that both of them took money from China. It's just, this is why when people have this argument, oh, the lesser of two evils, I told you another night ago, they're not that different. They're really not that different. But here's Joe Biden again on record saying he did not take any money from any foreign entity. Obviously, that includes China. Let's continue.
Number one. Number two. This is a president. I have released all of my tax returns, 22 years. Go look at them. 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot.
So Biden had released his tax returns, correct. But as we have seen over the past couple of weeks, remember, one of the things that was reported was that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden set up shell accounts with money coming from shell companies, companies that don't really exist. They're not real. So yes, he provided his taxes, but he was hiding shit. Yes, Donald Trump should have, released his tax information as well. But Joe Biden released his tax returns and he still was hiding financial information.
Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax return or stop talking about corruption?
President Trump, your response.
First of all, I called my accountants under audit. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it. And it'll show how successful, how great this company is. But much more importantly than that, people were saying $750. I asked them a week ago, I said, what did I pay? They said, sir, you prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid my tax. Tens over the last number of years. Tens of millions of dollars I prepaid. Because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax. So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your accountant
Nobody
tell
told you that. Excuse
them?
me. And it wasn't written whenever they write this. They keep talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do.
Turns out that might have been true. Keep in mind, this was before the Ukraine war. At that point in time, a lot of us weren't even thinking about Ukraine. Look at the look on Joe Biden's face. Look at his look. Look. You see this? Look. So think about it. Think about that. We weren't thinking about Ukraine then. Let's continue.
I don't make money from Russia. You made $3.5 million, Joe, and your son gave you. They even have a statement that we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man, I think. I don't know. Maybe you're not, but you're the big man, I think. Your son said we have to give 10% to the big man. Joe, what's that all about? It's terrible.
All right, gentlemen, I want to.
They're both corrupt. At the end of the day, they're both corrupt. Just because Joe Biden released his tax returns doesn't mean he wasn't hiding shit. He was still hiding business dealings and business information. Both of them. Man, it's great to look back on this.
Ask you both some questions about all of this. But I'm going to let you both respond very quickly. You just said you spoke to your accountant about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you have a deadline for when you're going to release them?
I get treated worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because I have a lot of people in there, deep down in the IRS, they treat me horribly. We made a deal, it was all settled until I decide to run for president. I get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly. But we had a deal all done. As soon as we're completed with the deal, I want to release it. But I have paid millions and millions of dollars, and it's worse than paying. I paid in advance. It's called prepaying your taxes. I paid in advance.
I want to ask you both about questions regarding your potential foreign entanglements and questions that have been raised to give you both a chance to talk about this more broadly.
By the way, when it comes to taxes and the IRS, remember, people who are wealthy can have offshore accounts. Just keep that in mind.
Respond very quickly, and then I'll get to my question.
Why did he's been saying this for 4 years? Show us. Just show us. Stop playing around. You've been saying for 4 years you're going to release your taxes. Nobody knows, Mr. President. What they do know is you're not paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on. Come on, folks.
So, President Trump, and then I want to get to two questions to both.
Joe Biden didn't say anything about the business dealings with Ukraine. And at the time when I was watching this, I guess I just, because they did start to get childish throughout this debate. So it was kind of a headache to watch this now that I'm remembering this again, a little traumatized. But now I am noticing he didn't answer that question. He didn't push back.
Both of you on this.
I was put through a phony witch hunt for 3 years. It started before I even got elected. They spied on my campaign. No president should ever have to go through what I went through. Let me just say this. Mueller and 18 angry Democrats and FBI agents all over the place spent $48 million. They went through everything I had, including my tax returns, and they found absolutely no collusion and nothing wrong. 48 million. I guarantee you, if I spent 1 million on you, Jill, I could find plenty wrong, because the kind of things that you've done and the kind of monies that your family has taken. I mean, your brother made money in Iraq, millions of dollars. Your other brother made a fortune, and it's all through you, Joe. And they say you get some of it, and you do live very well. You have houses all over the place. You live.
And they say that you get some of it. Now we see, based on information that has come about because of the Hunter Biden laptop story, that may have been true. Joe Biden laughs it off because it just, it was kind of easy for him to kind of laugh some of these things off, because this was not, in my opinion, this was not a good debate for Donald Trump. I don't think he did well in this debate. I think a lot of people saw that. So for some of these attacks, he could just kind of just laugh it off, or not even push back on it at all, and just be like, okay, he's delusional. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just saying whatever. And a lot of people bought it. A lot of people saw this debate, didn't think to look any further. Oh, I wonder if this stuff is true, that he took money from China and he had business dealings in Ukraine. I wonder if this is true. I wonder if these things are true about him and his son. No, most people just laughed it off as well.
Very well.
All right, gentlemen, let me just ask some questions about all of this broadly. Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal. With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of a Burisma, a company, that somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said, I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing. Number one.
Apparently, due to recent information, that's not true.
Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do, because it never, ever, ever happened.
False. Again, video doesn't lie. Like, you can always go back to video. That's the thing, is like, you can always go back to this now.
My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about? China. I have not had the only guy made money from China is this guy.
Could be true. But again, let's just go back up to the top where it says right here. Okay. Hunter Biden admitted in court this week that he received over $600,000 from a Chinese company with ties to the CCP. So again, that was a lie. Is Joe Biden going to be held accountable for lying to the American people on the national stage? Probably not.
He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
President Trump, let me ask my question to you.
Could I just one thing?
Very quickly.
His son didn't have a job for a long time, was sadly no longer in the military service. I won't get into that. And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, Burisma, not the best reputation in the world. I hear they paid him $183,000 a month. Listen to this. $183,000, and they gave him a $3 million upfront payment.
All right.
And he had no energy.
I'm going to let the vice president respond to that quickly, and then
they cut that off. Let me interrupt.
I need to get to a question to you. Very
No
quickly,
basis for that. Everybody investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
No, apparently that's not true, Joe. So I wanted to take you back to that first before we get into this update in reference to Hunter Biden. Now, for those who are not aware, Hunter Biden has been hoping for a plea deal, right? Again, rich people, they try to get these plea deals if there's enough evidence against them. And that's what Hunter Biden tried to do. But apparently, that did not go Hunter Biden's way. It appears the judge is not on his side. Let's get into this clip first. And then I have an article I want to show you as well with more detail. Here we go.
Well, it's been 24 hours since a federal judge in Delaware put Hunter Biden's plea deal on hold. The judge giving both sides 30 days to provide additional information to ease her concerns over the scope of the agreement, which involves tax crimes and a gun charge. Neither Biden's attorneys nor the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney overseeing this case has spoken publicly about what happened in court, nor what happens next. But luckily, we are joined by a former federal prosecutor, Ankush Khardori, who is speaking out. Ankush, thank you so much for your time. First of all, just talk to us about what is in this deal, and is most of it in jeopardy at this point?
So there are two sort of pieces of this deal. One is a plea agreement concerning misdemeanor tax charges that Hunter Biden has been charged with. And the other is a pretrial diversion agreement that would resolve a charge for possessing a gun while he was a drug user.
This is what they tried to get. Hunter Biden's original plea deal agreed to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax crimes. By the way, this is nothing compared to what they could get him for. No charge on gun possession pending completion of a diversion program. Again, this is nothing. Nothing. This is one of those things where I've said before, like, there must be enough evidence against someone who's in a position of power, or they're connected to someone in a position of power, or they're wealthy. And there's so much evidence against them that it's like, you don't want them to look too bad because Joe Biden is involved somehow and he's the president of the United States. So they'll try to get him on something small to make it seem like they did justice when they're not doing justice actually, just so people can kind of be quiet and this will go away. And that's exactly what they're trying to do right here with Hunter Biden. Misdemeanor, agreed to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax crimes. This is nothing compared to what they could get him and Joe Biden on. But that's what they're going to try to do. Go with the small stuff.
And, you know, judging from the comments yesterday and the reporting that came out from it, it sounds like the judge was principally concerned about the scope of the immunity that Hunter Biden would obtain through this agreement. And in particular, how much of the conduct that the government has already investigated is really, you know, this would shut the door on, you know, meaning these charges and this deal and the sentencing would resolve it, or whether the government might be able to come back and still charge Hunter Biden, say, with a foreign agent registration violation on the basis of these same underlying business transactions. So that's, you know, a significant issue. And the judge sort of correctly, evidently sussed out some ambiguity on the subject and some divergence of views among the parties. But I don't think the whole thing is in jeopardy simply because this happens from time to time. It's not usually this dramatic, but, you know, plea agreements, sometimes they hit some friction once they get to the courtroom where, you know, the prosecutor and the defendant are not the only people in charge anymore. And what often happens, what typically happens, is that the prosecutors and the defense are able to go back, rework some of the language, you know, make sure that they're on the same page, address the judge's concerns. And I'm sure that's what they're going to attempt to do now. We obviously don't know what the ultimate resolution would be, but I think the odds are pretty good that they are able to work something out to the satisfaction of the parties and ultimately to the judge.
This guy looks scary. When I first saw this video, I was like, whoa. I don't know if it's the lighting. Maybe they put makeup on his face. I don't know. Dude looks kind of scary. But just keep in mind now, there's more up-to-date information that I'm going to show you after this. This is when they were trying to figure out if the plea deal could be salvaged. And I want you to also keep in mind that, again, if it were you or me, we probably wouldn't even have this type of a deal. Hunter Biden is using his privilege. The fact that he's the president's son, He's protected. When Judge Joe Brown was on here, I asked him, I said, who is protecting Hunter Biden? He said his father. Isn't that a mess? Because Joe Biden's son can be protected. Joe Biden's son on camera doing drugs on camera that some people in this country and some who you may know, who may be members of your family, your friends, or your community, who went to prison and did hard time for doing the same thing that Hunter Biden did under Joe Biden's crime bills. But Hunter Biden gets away with it because he's Joe Biden's son.
All right. So, Ankush, you said, what normally happens is they'll go back, they'll work something out. So is this kind of just par for the course? Is it common for deals to fall apart, and so to speak, at this point? Or is, because there was so much shock when this came down yesterday. I think shock, whether you were a Democrat or a Republican, I don't think anyone was expecting that.
There was so much shock because people expected him to get off, easily. People expected the judge to honor the plea deal because of who Hunter Biden is.
Yeah, so I would say the sort of notion that a plea hearing might not go off the way it's anticipated, that's not unusual. What is unusual about this, I mean, obviously the person involved is very unusual, but what is unusual about the way that this plea hearing sort of went awry is that it wasn't the usual situation, which is the defendant maybe gets cold feet, the defendant isn't able to successfully allocute and answer all the judge's questions. The defendant maybe wants to maintain some element of innocence surrounding something. That's often what throws a wrench in the process. This was a legal issue that the lawyer should have had a handle on, or at a minimum should have been capable of responding to the judge's questions kind of crisply and in real time. And it sounds like from the reports, she got understandably a little frustrated by the fact that there weren't clear answers to her questions.
All right. So it sounds, based on your first answer, that you do believe they will be able to come to a deal at some point. But I mean, is it at least possible that Hunter Biden could potentially end up behind bars?
Hold on to that question.
Well, it's definitely possible, right? It's definitely possible that this deal falls through. He now has been charged with the tax crimes and has entered a not guilty plea for the time being. And, if this deal doesn't come to fruition, then the case proceeds like any other case, right? He lodges a defense. If that defense is unsuccessful at the pretrial stage, there's a trial, and so on and so forth. So both possibilities are in play now. You're right about that.
All right. Yeah, we will.
Okay. So since that clip, it appears the judge has declined. The judge said, hell no. Judge declines to approve Hunter Biden's plea deal for now. Now, this was released earlier today. Or was that the other day? Earlier the other day, it was updated. Hunter Biden's plea deal hit a roadblock during an unexpectedly contentious federal court hearing Wednesday, as prosecutors and Biden's attorneys initially disagreed about the scope of the agreement, and the judge then balked at approving the deal. Tensions grew after a prosecutor said the federal investigation into the president's son is ongoing. After pressing both sides for details about the plea deal, U.S. District Judge Mary Ellen Norica adjourned the hearing so that two sides could refine and clarify the agreement, under which Biden had planned to plead guilty. By Biden, they mean Hunter. They probably should say Hunter here. Had planned to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax offenses and likely avoid punishment on a felony gun charge. I want to highlight the felony gun charge. Anyone else would go to jail. Anyone else? We have Hunter Biden on video doing drugs. There's no drug charges. Anyone else would go to jail. Having a firearm, felony gun charge, anyone else would go to jail. This is This is the president's son. And yes, you can't always control what your kids do as they get older. I totally get that. But the problem is that Joe Biden has continued to cover for him. The problem is that Joe Biden has continued to participate in the shady business dealings that Hunter Biden had. So Joe was a part of it. I mean, come on, the apple don't fall too far from the damn tree. Where'd he get it from? You remember that commercial? There was a commercial when I was growing up. It was a don't do drugs commercial. And the father comes into his kid's room and he finds his son doing drugs. And he says, "Where did you get that from? Huh? Look at me. Where did you learn how to do this? Where did you get it from?" And the kid looks at me and goes, "You, I learned it from you, okay?" And the father kind of steps back. Those commercials were so dramatic. Jay said, "I learned it from you." Yeah, those commercials were so dramatic back in the day. There was also the one where someone would crack open an egg into a frying pan. This is your brain. This is the egg was your brain. And then they would crack it open into the frying pan and say, "This is your brain on drugs," in questions. Listen, my generation, like growing up, like they really tried to scare the crap out of us. And then people wonder why we're just, we may be a little dysfunctional as adults. I don't think they would show those commercials to kids today. "I learned it from you, okay?" Anyway, I think he might have learned some of this stuff from Biden. At the end of the tumultuous 3-hour hearing, Biden instead wound up pleading not guilty to all 3 charges, and the judge postponed further proceedings likely for a month or more. The proposed deal between Biden and the Justice Department, the outline of which was announced last month, isn't dead, but prosecutors and Biden's lawyers will now have to satisfy Norika's concerns about technical aspects of the deal and her own role in enforcing a so-called pre-trial diversion agreement under which Biden would avoid prison time on the gun charge if he remains drug-free for 2 years and doesn't break any other laws. But like I said before, not everyone got that opportunity. Under Ronald Reagan's, wasn't Ronald Reagan that did the drug war? Reagan's drug war, under Joe Biden's crime bills, those people didn't get that opportunity. They didn't get no second chance. Like, well, if you promise to do this, then you'll be all right. No. Rich people get these types of opportunities. When they get caught with drugs, they go to rehab. When poor people get caught with drugs, they go to jail. This is something to think about. I will continue to watch this story because we have to keep an eye on this. And I'm just I would like to say I think that justice will win through this time, but I don't. I really do believe that Joe Biden's going to find a way to make sure that his son gets off and that his son doesn't serve the time that he should for the crimes that he has done. Deneen says, "This Hunter Biden case is making me hotter than Jim Clyburn's fish fry grease." Oh, man. Colin says, "Correct, Sabby Sabs, you are sharp." Thank you, Colin. Thank you for the super chat, M. Smith. Plea deal, no, a sweetheart deal. Dwayne says, "Biden bragged about firing the prosecutor looking into Hunter's appointment to Burisma when he was vice president." And there you go. If you haven't had a chance to do so, guys, go ahead and smash that like button. That helps me with the algo. Thank you. We're moving on to RFK Jr.'s town hall. Now, to my surprise, a couple of people contacted me and said they didn't even know there was another town hall. I don't know what to tell you. This was actually on Fox News. Does seem like it wasn't advertised as much, maybe. I don't know. But there are 2 parts that I do want to focus on in this particular town hall. Now, Sean Hannity hosted this discussion. I want to start from the very beginning in reference to why he's running for president. There's a couple of things I did notice here and there. I don't know if everyone in the audience is necessarily an RFK supporter. I don't know if everyone in the audience is necessarily conservative or Democrat, if it's mixed or whatever. but he did get a standing ovation here. So shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. And let's go ahead and get started with the town hall.
Have a seat. How are you? Very well. They're all here to see me. They didn't know. I'm kidding. You have a lot of fans here. I guess my first question is an obvious one, but maybe we'll learn something. You're challenging a sitting U.S. president in your party. You have to have good reason to do so. Tell us what it is.
Well, you know what? I saw, first of all, thank you for having me, Sean. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I saw a poll yesterday afternoon that said that in 1985, 85% of Americans were proud to be American. 85% of Americans between 18 and 30 years old. And a poll taken last week of people that same age, of Americans that same age, say that only 42% are proud to be American. I want my children to grow up as proud of this country as I was. And, you know, I grew up at a time when we believed with really good reason that this country was the greatest country in history, and that we were a moral authority around the world. That we were in, and there was plenty of evidence that the world wanted our leadership. They knew the difference between leadership and bullying, but people all over the world looked to the United States of America for leadership. When my uncle was president, he lived up to that role, and there is now more statues to him, more boulevards named after him, more avenues, more universities in Africa and Asia and Latin America than any other president. And it evinced because he didn't focus on shooting people and on he never sent a combat veteran abroad or combat soldier abroad to die.
So he's talking about JFK's presidency, how JFK chose to help out some African countries in reference to education, and how he was not willing to send U.S. troops abroad. One thing I will say, though, and I notice he tends to do this a lot, I think that when you're the one that's running, and I get it from the very beginning when I covered his announcement on the ground in Boston, he talked a lot about his uncle and his father. Like, he talked for a long time. That was a long speech, but he talked a lot about his uncle and his father. But I think going forward, I think people kind of want to hear, what are you going to do? And not necessarily what your father did and what your uncle did. I think it's getting to the point, especially when we get to next year, 2024, it's getting to the point where people want to know, what are you going to do, though? We know what JFK did. We know what RFK did. What are you going to do? What are your plans? So I think the focus should be more so that, and I think it's eventually going to get to the point where, like, he's not going to be on a debate stage. He's not going to be on a debate stage. But if this debate between him and Cornel West does happen, I know, that's something we're trying to get to happen over at RBN. If that does happen, you can't come with my dad did this and my uncle did that. You got to tell people exactly what you want to do and what you are going to do. I think after a while, that's going to become redundant and people aren't going to want to hear that as much anymore. I get it. When he first announced on the ground in Boston, that made sense because he was here in Boston. It was the first announcement, and this is where they are all from. But going forward, I think he needs to focus more so on what he's going to do, not what those who came before him.
He sent 16,000 military advisors to Vietnam and then awarded them all home 1 month before he died, and they were allowed to participate in combat exercises. Some of them did. And instead, he sent Peace Corps volunteers. He created the Alliance for Progress. He created USAID. He wanted to put America on the side of the poor all over the world and on the side of democracy, but not at the force of the gun. In this country, I grew up at a time that was called the Great Prosperity, when we created the middle class, which was the greatest economic engine ever created, the American middle class, and it was the foundation stone of our democracy.
This is another thing I want to point out that I've noticed when we're looking at things economically. Everybody talks about the middle class, but you rarely hear them mention poor. What about the people who are poor? We bring up this issue that the middle class is shrinking, but as the middle class shrinks, where are those people going to? Right? Those people are either moving towards working class. Some working class people are moving towards poor. Like, we have to make this connection. And I think that's really important. All of them are going to do this. I'm telling you, 2024, all of these candidates are going to talk about, we need a prospering middle class. We got to save the middle class, but you never hear them mention people who are poor. It's almost as if they're just forgotten about. They're a lost cause. What do we need to focus on them for? That's what it feels like sometimes.
A guy asked me, a New Yorker editor who interviewed me a couple of weeks ago, said to me, what qualifies you to be president? You've never been in Congress. You've never been a governor. You've never been in the Senate. And for me, that's probably the best qualification. Because I'm not saying anything bad about people. I think most people who are in public office are there because they want to be good citizens. They want to be good public servants. But
So this is a good point that he brings up when he says that, maybe it's a good thing that he hasn't actually been in office, that he hasn't held like a political position before. That is one thing I do agree with. Like I said before, look at all the people that we have right now that are in office that have been there for years, or they started as like city councilors. Like Ayanna Pressley, for example, started as a city councilor in Boston and then moved up to a congresswoman. But we've been doing it that way for so long. And so one of the things I will say is that maybe it's a good thing to have someone in there that's not, a politician, that hasn't held political office. So I agree with him on that.
System nowadays tends to co-opt you. And, to run for senator in this state, Sean, it costs $100 million. And that means that you have to spend most of your time jetting between Southampton and Palm Beach and Los Angeles and hang out with billionaires who are going to give you money.
So he said you have to spend your time between like South Beach and Los Angeles and hang out with billionaires that are going to give you money. But that's exactly what he's doing. You see, I listened to this entire town hall, and that was the first thing that jumped out at me is like, whoa, that's what he's doing. We talked about this. We talked about the money. Nothing changes for me on this. Nothing changes for me when it comes to billionaire money and this issue of billionaires donating to these campaigns. So it does not change for me that David Sachs, who is a billionaire, is donating to RFK Jr.'s campaign and donating to Ron DeSantis' campaign, hosting fundraisers for these guys. He also hosted a fundraiser for Ro Khanna too, by the way. We went through all the receipts. So the thing is like, here he is criticizing people hanging out with billionaires and taking billionaire money, but he's leaving out that he's doing the same thing. That's important for you to know. For those of you who are voters, you should know that. I don't care if you like RFK Jr. or not. You can't look past that. Just keep it real.
My job over the past 40 years has been suing government agencies for corruption. And representing people, 10,000 families in Smelter, West Virginia, who are poisoned by zinc and lead from a DuPont smelting facility. 1,000 families I'm now representing in Columbiana County, Pennsylvania, or Ohio, for the Norfolk Southern spill. The 10,000 families I represented in the DuPont case were poisoned by PFAS and PFOAs, and the 40,000 people I represented in Monsanto. And I end up, and fishermen who I've, represented, as you know, my whole life on the Hudson and other places. And I end up seeing how people live. And I've seen the disintegration of the American dream and the American experience. I've seen not only the social and economic deprivation that now exists in this country that's like what I saw in Latin America when I was a kid. I never dreamed I'd see it in this country.
So he's talking about the environmental issues that he's seen happen, I guess originally first in other countries in Latin America, but he's now starting, as time went by, he started to see that happen in the United States as well. So yes, he's an environmental lawyer. He's talked a lot about these issues in reference to how, these companies like Monsanto, and also if we want to talk about East Palestine, Ohio, Norfolk Southern, the railroad companies, like how they just get away with poisoning these communities. And it's just like, there's no real accountability, man. Like people die because of these health issues that they develop because of the environmental pollution they've caused. Erin Brockovich is someone who's really passionate about this issue. That's how she came to be pretty well-known, pushing back against an environmental issue. So I think that's all great that he is fighting for those things. And to that point, this is why I say he should support universal health care for everyone. Now, he mentioned on Breaking Points that he agrees with everybody having health care, but he said it would not be feasible. And no, it is feasible. Economically, it is feasible. Because the thing is, this has been shown time and time again, even when Bernie Sanders was running and the professor who actually did the financial study, they showed you that you actually save money by giving everybody health care, then keeping these big pharma companies in position. And also in reference to his position, how he feels about the jab, and he does criticize, big pharma about that. Then at the same time, he knows that big pharma is corrupt. So if you know that big pharma is corrupt, why would you even be for a public option? That still gives them the opportunity to still be corrupt and exploit people. So that's the thing. That's another thing for me where I don't make the connection there. If you've seen people go through environmental poisonings, like in their communities, and developing health issues because of it, and you see like the toll that big pharma has had on this country, especially with his criticism in reference to the jab, then to me, it's a no-brainer that you would support universal health care for everybody. Like I wouldn't even stop and say this is not feasible. It is feasible because the studies have already been done that economically we can do it. So what's it really about? Let's continue.
57% of Americans can't put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency.
How scary is that?
35% of people in this country do not make enough money to pay for basic human needs for transportation, housing, and food. So they have to make choices every day. They have to listen to the baby crying in the room next door and have to wonder whether that baby is $30 sick or $40 or $200 sick before they bring him to a hospital. They have to choose between heat and food, between medicine and food. My wife.
See, there he is again. He's talking about the cost of living. He's talking about people having to choose between heat and food, between medicine and food. So again, it's a no-brainer for me. You should support universal health care. Also, what is his policy in reference to the minimum wage? Like, what does he think the minimum wage should be? He's talking about all these economic issues, how some people are barely making it. These are some things to think about.
My wife and I had this discussion. My wife grew up very, very poor. And until she, got a break by getting the job from Larry David on Curb Your Enthusiasm, she was living in poverty.
By the way, she's great on that show.
Thanks.
She really is.
Yeah.
You like that show? Good job.
And she said,
Bebel, what was that? What does that even mean? We talked about legacy admissions last night. So Bebel's Bebel said legacy admission via politics. Oh man.
She said to me, you know, the whole time I was living paycheck to paycheck. And she said,
by the way, so was I.
yeah.
I can identify with that.
And, you know, that is
not fun.
It's frightening. And she said, you know, we were talking about how depression and mental illness rates and suicide rates have risen just dramatically in this country. And she said, well, being poor makes you depressed because you're scared all the time and you think there's something wrong with you. And, you know, this is not the America that
Let me ask you, but I hear everything. I'm listening very closely to what you're saying, and you're saying that we can do better. And I agree with you. We have nearly, you know, over 60% of this country living paycheck to paycheck. The average American owes $55,000 in debt. People are cashing in their pensions to get bare necessities, or they're putting stuff on credit cards at, you know, 22.5% interest rate. Now,
he lost me at the word pension, because I don't know what anyone in my generation that got a pension. He lost me with that word. Does this still happen? Those of you who are familiar and you've had pensions, like this, is this still a thing? People still get a pension? Hugo says not many have pensions. Yeah, I don't know anybody that has a pension. Not anyone in my age group. Where he says pensions, those were the days, LOL. Ravina said, I lost mine in 2008. Damn. Eric says 401ks now at best. Yeah, I know about 401, but he lost me at that part.
I would argue that's part of the Biden economy. And you know, the only difference where we might separate here is whether or not you think it ought to be a government program. I think it's free market economies that inspire entrepreneurs, and you have the freedom and the ability to bring goods and services to market versus.
You have the freedom to do that when you have the startup capital to do so. That's the piece that they always leave out. Like, people don't just become an entrepreneur just out of nowhere. It takes money to make money. So you usually have to get a loan from a bank if they'll give you one, or you have to get money from somewhere else if you don't already have it. This is why when people brag and say that someone is a self-made millionaire, and I'm like, and they came from a family of wealth, like people say this about Kylie Jenner. I'm like, how is she self-made when her family, the wealth came from the family? So it's not something that's easy to do. When people bring up the entrepreneurship, that piece always gets me, as if you could just do this just like that.
Say the government giving you your bare necessities. I mean,
yeah, of course, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants to live on the government dole. And it is. I mean, we don't have free market capitalism in this country. We have corporate crony capitalism.
So you notice most of the people in the audience, it seems like they agree with them. He said, we don't have free market capitalism in this country. We have crony capitalism in this country. To me, capitalism is capitalism. I mean, there's still exploitation of the workers. Free market capitalism, there's exploitation of the workers. Crony capitalism, there's exploitation of the workers. People can come up with all these fancy names for it, but it's still capitalism.
We have a system of cushy socialism for the super rich, and this brutal, kind of brutal, savage, merciless capitalism for the poor. And it's all designed to strip mine the middle class of this country of all of their equity, all of their assets, and move it to the upper echelons. And you know, the COVID lockdowns were the final straw. COVID lockdowns, we created a billionaire a day, and this was Trump and Biden. Of 500 days of lockdowns, we created a billionaire a day. We moved $4 trillion from the American middle class to the super rich.
And we pause this part here and we'll go to the next part, because this is where he gets into the discussion that we can't really dive into on YouTube. But I want to go to the next part in just a second. But that point there was true. And we talked about this before, that during the pandemic, a lot of these CEOs actually doubled their wealth. While you may have lost your job or you may have lost your business, there were a lot of small businesses that closed here in Boston. Some of them that were tourist attractions, they couldn't manage to, continue to pay the rent for the building because they weren't making any money. They weren't bringing any money in because everything was closed. So he's right about that, how they continue to make a lot of money, especially companies like Amazon. Now, I want to dive into this second part of the town hall here. This is where you guys let me know how you feel. I feel like this is where Sean Hannity tries to do a gotcha. And I wasn't feeling this at all. Like, listen to this.
I want to go back, and this drives me nuts, because I've been making the case that our current president, I don't think he knows today's Tuesday. He could not sit with me as you are and have this conversation, in my view. I think he is physically weak and cognitively a mess. And nobody wants to say it except the few of us. I want you to look at this tape and tell me if you think he's fit for the job. Take a look.
Let's go. Look at the world. We cheer for Muslim athletes like Kareem and Joan Shanga Koawa. Ban on transgender Americans.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate
It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere. It's a very exciting day around here. We'll have reaction.
I met alone with him, just he and I, and a simultaneous interpreter 68 times, 68 hours, 68 times, more than 68 hours. All right. God save the Queen, man.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We really appreciate it, and we love you. Thank you.
I might add, if I didn't, I'd be sleeping alone. I better explain that. Some don't know. My wife's a Philly girl. All right, where are we going? Well, we're going to win, and we're going to help. We have plans to build a railroad from the Pacific all the way across the Indian Ocean.
Notice that he has a lot of examples here about Joe Biden's cognitive decline.
By the way, I met with who are those guys that fly over shortly? You heard of them, haven't you?
Okay. Do you believe that he is physically, mentally, cognitively strong enough to lead our country? This world is a dangerous place. Robert Kennedy Jr., you know that this is a dangerous place. Is he cognitively strong enough to be your president?
Well, he's never been very good with words.
So you see what he did there? You see how he answered that question? Well, he's never been very good with words. Instead of just saying like, no, he's not fit to be president right now. I would have no problem saying that, by the way. I have a feeling that, Marianne wouldn't say it either. I have a feeling that like their campaign staff or whoever their campaign managers have probably told them, don't go there because then it'll be used against you. That's what I'm assuming is probably happening. But I would have no problem saying that.
All right, you get an A+ for that answer. Is he up to the job? First of all, let me ask, how many of you here think he is not up to the job? Let me hear. Now, I know that there's a reluctance for politicians, and you're a Democratic Party guy. You said that at the censorship hearing where they censored you. And you devoted your life to things you believe in, and it's probably hard for you to say that, but do you really think he's up to the job?
No, but I'm not reluctant to say that for partisan reasons, Sean.
Okay.
What I've tried to do during this campaign is avoid personal attacks on people. I will.
That's the same thing Marianne Williamson said, by the way. Avoid the personal attacks. Just FYI. I think they all got the same PR talking point.
Whether he's up to it or not, whether he's making his own decisions, the decisions that are coming out of the White House are bad decisions.
Right.
And, the Democratic Party does not censor people, in my experience. We're not the party of war. We're not the party of the neocons dictating foreign policy. We're the party of the middle class, and we're the party of working people. And
no, we're not. See, that's the thing. RFK Jr. is still living in this timeline where the Democratic Party was for working class people, where they wanted the working class people to feel empowered. He's still living in that timeline. We're in a different timeline now, where the Democratic Party are warmongers, just like the Republican Party. They are pro censorship. Things have changed. They are corporate, like they're pro Wall Street first. They're pro the military industrial complex. Like, this idea of, this irks me almost as much as the people who want to reform the Democratic Party, like the Justice Democrats, and like that progressive strategy of putting progressives in the Democratic Party to reform the Democratic Party. This irks me just as much as that. Like the people who want to take this party back to a time when they remember it was actually more better for working class people or for middle class people. Like, those days are gone. You want to take the Democratic Party back to a time before super PACs and PACs. We have super PACs and PACs. Things are so different now. I mean, it's a corporation. We've covered this. I interviewed the DNC fraud lawsuit attorneys. The DNC is a corporation. They argued this in court. It's not like, this is not a political party. This really isn't like some just organization that you join and you're like, hey, we're going to do things fair. No, it's a corporation. So how do you take a corporation back to that time period? You can't, it's owned. Let's continue here.
That's not where the party is anymore.
I would tell you, here would be my agenda, and I think you agree on some of these things. I want to secure our borders. I believe every American has the right to be safe and secure in their town, in their city. That means we have to have law and order.
Pay very close attention to what Sean Hannity does here. We're going to go back for just a little bit because he's trying to, well, let me let him just, you'll see what he's trying to do. Pay close attention to this.
Here would be my agenda, and I think you agree on some of these things. I want to secure our borders. I believe every American has the right to be safe and secure in their town, in their city. That means we have to have law and order. It's a prerequisite to pursue happiness.
Let me pause right there before he finishes mentioning the other things that he agree with. So he points out, secure border, and then he mentions safety in your towns and says that means we need law and order. Notice the way that he's framing it. He's framing it in such a way as though it doesn't sound that bad, right? So those two things that he just mentioned in reference to his position on immigration and his position on law enforcement, those are conservative positions. Now watch what he continues to do. Watch this.
I want an economy that is thriving, an opportunity economy where everybody, regardless of where you start in life, can climb that ladder to success. I want a mean, tough, kick-ass, killer military that would serve as a deterrent to any hostile regime that might have ill intentions towards us.
Pause right there. Those two. So he mentions he wants a kick-ass military and he notice how he frames it. He frames it in a way that I want this kick-ass military for defense, just in case some other country that's hostile comes after us. Notice how he's framing it. He's softening the language to make it more appealing. So pay close attention to that. In other words, he supports the military industrial complex. That's also a conservative. Well, actually, no, not just a conservative position nowadays. Both parties agree with that. The other position that he mentioned, oh, shoot, I forgot. Hold on. Paul Sachs. Sorry, guys. I don't want to go back too far. Okay.
Down in their city, that means we have to have law and order. It's a prerequisite to pursue happiness. I want an economy that is thriving, an opportunity economy where everybody, regardless of where you start in life, can climb that ladder to success.
Okay, that was the other piece. So in other words, what he's basically saying is he wants capitalism. He wants capitalism to continue. But again, notice the way that he's framing it. He's softening the language to make it sound more appealing to even to people who may not be conservative, right? Wait for the kicker.
I want a mean, tough, kick-ass, killer military that would serve as a deterrent to any hostile regime that might have ill intentions towards us. I believe in peace through strength with all my heart. Control our borders, all these things. I believe that educational school choice.
Educational school choice. So again, let me rephrase that. What he's really saying is the whole decision that happened with the Supreme Court overturning affirmative action in reference to university admissions, he agrees with that. He's on board with that. So you have to pay attention to the framing, because when they say just, oh, I believe in school choice, yeah, that sounds like, oh yeah, I would like to pick what school I want to go to, but that's not what he's talking about. So you have to, this is sneaky, but wait till you hear what RFK Jr. does. Wait for it.
We agree on these things?
Yeah, we agree on all those things.
No.
That part right there. Do we agree on these things? And RFK Jr. says, yes, we agree on all those things. So what Sean Hannity just did, he basically got RFK Jr. to admit that he agrees on conservative positions. I hope everybody noticed that. Now, what is Sean Hannity's goal when he did that? What was his goal? Why did he do that? How do you do that? Why did he do that? He's running as a Democrat. Why did he do that? So that doesn't help RFK Jr.'s case when people say RFK Jr. is actually a secret right-winger that's running through the Democratic Party. That doesn't help his case. Let me continue.
One area I don't like the fact that America is bearing the brunt and the burden of financing most of the war against Putin in Ukraine. I think we agree on that part. Why isn't Europe, why don't they ever step up and defend their own continent before they ask for U.S. involvement? And why would Joe Biden veto Poland, giving Zelensky fighter jets to actually fight to win the war after they were invaded?
Yeah, but when you change this country, and this is what we've seen time and time again, they'll have that position in reference to Russia and Ukraine. But when you change the country and the country is China, all of a sudden it's, oh yeah, no, we need to stop them. What I don't want for people to happen, this is what I do not want to happen. I'm already seeing this happening. That's why I'm stressing this. I don't want people, when they hear this rhetoric, to assume that people are anti-war because they disagree with the war between Russia and Ukraine. Because when you change the country, they're not anti-war. So let's not fall into this trap of, oh, the conservatives are anti-war now. First of all, you can't speak for everybody, right? You can't just say, oh, the Republican Party is anti-war now. Neither one of these parties are anti-war. There may be individuals in those parties that disagree with war, but neither one of those parties are anti-war. But let's hear what he has to say.
Well, the more disturbing thing is that on two occasions, the Russians tried to sign a peace agreement with Zelensky.
Do you trust Putin?
Do I trust Putin? No, but that's not. Listen, I've litigated over 500 lawsuits. All of them end up with, or many of them end up with settlements or one kind or the other. And he never trusts the guy on the other side. You use language art, you use the design of agreements.
So Ukraine, to appease Putin, who I think is evil, they've already given up Crimea. It was annexed. So what? They have to give up the Donbass area.
Ukraine, because of our pushing the Ukraine into the war on two occasions,
we pushed them into it, or Putin?
Well, let me tell you. Let me answer your question.
Yeah.
In 2019, France, Germany, and Russia all agreed to the Minsk Accords. That year, Zelensky ran for president. He was a comedian. He had no political experience. Why did he win? Because he ran on one issue, signing the Minsk Accords.
Just going to pause here for just a second. I think going forward, and all of them have done this. All these candidates have done this so far. I think going forward, when they mention the Minsk Accords, and especially if they're doing a town hall or interview, I think they need to explain to people what that is. The average American has no idea what you're talking about. I'm just keeping it real. Like the average American that is not as knowledgeable about Russia-Ukraine conflict or isn't even paying attention to this, most of them have no idea what RFK Jr. or Marianne or Cornell are saying when they mention Minsk Accords. They have no idea. Most people are sitting back like, well, what? What does that mean? What is it? So I think it would be good for people to start breaking that down.
As soon as he got in there, Victoria Nuland in the White House told him he couldn't do it. Then Putin sends 40,000 troops in. That's not enough to conquer the country. Clearly, he wanted us to come to he wanted somebody to come to the negotiating table. Zelensky came to the negotiating table, signed a new agreement that was the Minsk Accords 2 in 2022, and that would have allowed Donbass to stay and Lugansk to remain as part of Ukraine. We said Putin signed it, Zelensky initialed it, and Putin in good faith began withdrawing troops from the Ukraine. What happened? We sent Boris Johnson over there to torpedo it because we don't want peace we want the war with Russia.
See, this is why they don't want to have primary debates. Can't get that message out there. And you guys know that Russia-Ukraine will be a topic, obviously, on the debate stage. Can't have Bobby Kennedy making that statement about Russia-Ukraine conflict. What would Joe Biden say? What is he going to say? We'll go on a little bit more here.
Why are you blaming America's role in this? And look, Putin to me is an evil, murdering dictator thug, and when he leaves this earth, nobody's going to miss him. Let's be honest. However, I think that Europe has a responsibility to protect their continent, and yet it always seems to fall on the United States. Joe Biden has committed all these billions of dollars that we can't afford, and he's not fighting the war to win the war. I don't believe in fighting wars half-assed. If you're going to fight a war, you go in, overwhelming force, you beat them, you get the hell out. That's it.
See, there's that pro-war rhetoric. See that?
And only if it's provoked. Putin did not need to invade a sovereign country, in my view. Is Zelensky perfect? Nope. I don't think he is either. I agree with you on that part. But America's role, I think, should be dictated first by Europe. And they've got to defend their continent. And they haven't stepped up, in my view.
Yeah. But to say, only if it's provoked and he feels like it wasn't, there's obviously something that Sean Hannity is missing here. That obviously Tucker Carlson got right. But Tucker Carlson is no longer there.
I mean, I don't think most of the European countries wanted the war either. It's clear what happened, which is that, from the beginning, we promised in 1992, the Russian leadership said, we will move, this was Gorbachev, said when the Soviet Union, he was getting ready to dismantle the Soviet Union, and he said, we're going to allow you, we're going to withdraw 400,000 troops from East Germany, and we're going to allow you to reunite Germany under NATO, which is a hostile army. That's a huge concession for them. The one commitment that we want, is what the Russians said, is that you will not move NATO to the east. James Baker, who was then Secretary of State under Bush, famously promised, we will not move NATO 1 inch to the east. Well, since then, we've moved it 1,000 miles in 14 countries. Now, when we started that plan in 1997, Bill Perry, who was the Secretary of Defense under Clinton, said to the Clinton administration, if you move NATO to the east, I'm resigning because you are forcing the Russians to come to war with us. George Kennan, who's the most important diplomat in American history, the architect of the containment policy during World War II, said the same thing. You do not need to make an enemy out of Russia. Russia should be treated the way we won the Cold War.
It gets complicated. Let me ask you a question.
And we'll go ahead and stop there. But again, if you want to see the full, because Case Study posts the entire town hall here in this clip. If you follow Case Study QB on Twitter, you can watch the full thing. I couldn't play, obviously, the stuff about the jab. I could not play on here. You guys know YouTube tripping with that. But I thought those were very valid points there towards the end. This is the piece that is often left out. The fact that there were negotiations or they tried to make negotiations in the beginning. The fact that they were provoked, that is true. Like I've said this before, it's no, one bad guy. I feel like there's bad on all sides, right? But this is something that I feel that NATO did want to happen. They wanted this war to happen. So I thought that was really good there towards the end. I had a couple of criticisms, like obviously you heard them. But yeah, I just wanted you guys to see what Sean Hannity was trying to do there. And I didn't like that. I don't like the sneaky sneak. I don't like the sneakity. Thank you for the super chat, FWC. The only thing we should be talking about now is how the U.S. is about to start World War III. We were just talking about that. Team Orca, he thought his family legacy would carry him. Hard Lenses in the chat says, now hit the like button for Sabs. Thank you so much, Kit. Thank you, Marvin. Cash rules the nation. Politic parties are just contractors. Thank you, Frank. That man said, God save the queen. I have died several slow deaths. Okay. And thank you for the super sticker, Leslie. Thank you so much. Okay. We're going to get to this story with Tucker and Ice Cube in just a second. I want to give a shout out to Aisha Lynn for being a Sabby member for 4 months. Look forward to tomorrow, Sabby. RBN BC. That's right. Tomorrow is the barbecue. I'll shout that out towards the end of the show. I'm super pumped for that. Okay. Anywho, Tucker Carlson and Ice Cube actually had a sit down, and I mean an in-person sit down. Ice Cube took Tucker Carlson through the hood. Like, really? So they had an interesting discussion here. Now, as you can imagine, a lot of people are not happy with Ice Cube for having this discussion with Tucker Carlson. I told you guys before, there are gatekeepers. There are some in the media space. There are some on social media. There are some within your community, my community, all of our communities. They want to tell you who you can talk to, how long you can talk to these people, who you can be in spaces with, who you can shake hands with. Gatekeepers. And I don't like a gate and a keep. We're going to start with this first clip here when they're actually driving through South Central LA. Now, if you want to see the full interview, you can only see it on Twitter. So just keep in mind, like Tucker doesn't have like this a YouTube channel or anything like that. But I thought it was a really good discussion. This is episode 10, Stay in Your Lane, our drive through South Central LA with Ice Cube. I want to just play just a little bit from here because I can't play too much from this clip because of the copyright, because there's music in certain parts, but there's just one little part I want to play from here. And then I'm going to go to part 2 with Ice Cube in the studio. So let's go ahead and start with the drive through first. And I believe we're starting at this point in the clip where Ice Cube is explaining to Tucker Carlson that Democrats have not helped people in South Central LA, how the neighborhood still looks bad. The people have not been, uplifted out of poverty, so to speak. And I think this piece right here is important. Listen to this.
3 decades and billions of dollars later, it's still a tough place.
How do you think politicians in Los Angeles have done running the city?
It's pretty much the same people running it the same way. Politicians only really pay attention to the people that give them money. Everybody else is kind of an extra in their movie. We would love you in the scene, but we could do the scene without you.
So that's really important. Politicians pay attention to the people that give them money. The rest of us, we're just extras in the movie. something to think about. So Ice Cube really doesn't pay that much attention to that. Let me see how far I can go, because I think we start.
Yeah, I do. Do you ever give money to politicians?
No.
Why?
I don't believe in politicians. Politicians have hidden agendas. They owe a lot of people a lot of favors. The more money you give them, the more you're listened to.
So you've never fallen?
Okay, so he's asking him if he ever gave money to politicians, and he said no. But listen to this piece.
For a politician.
I can't say that. I've had hope and, dreams that, this guy is going to be the guy.
What did you think of Obama when he got elected?
For the first time, I felt proud that America took that step.
Yep.
I felt that same way. At that point in time, I felt that same way. I was like, wow, I'm so proud of our country. Little did I know how much of a pawn, how much of a puppet Barack Obama would be. I think a lot of us learned from that moment.
I didn't think they would ever do that. And so that was a moment in time. But then, you look around, years go by, and not much change for people I know, people I care about.
We've had 6 major race riots on the president's watch. Race relations have plummeted to lows not seen since the Rodney King.
In Chicago, a toddler is now the latest victim of the city's deadly surge in gun violence.
But it didn't change with Bush. It didn't change with Clinton. It didn't change with other Bush, Reagan, Carter. So, at the end of the day, it's still the same results.
So you're describing a symbolic victory?
Yes.
All right, and let's go ahead and stop there, and we'll go to the next clip. Because what's really important when he talks about, it didn't change through any of those politicians is true. And this is why we say, no one person is going to save you. You can have someone who's there to represent the views and the policies that you care passionately about. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a movement that's actually behind it and that continues after the campaign, regardless if they win or not, this is where people fall back to sleep. And that's what happened with Bernie Sanders. People thought Bernie was going to be the savior. People thought the squad was going to save them. And when these people disappoint you or they did not win, you had nothing to go back to. Because the movement was just around a campaign when the movement should have been centered around worker rights as well, helping people who are poor, the housing issue that we have in this country. That should have never ended just because Bernie Sanders' campaign ended. And I think that's the difference between having someone who's already a politician who's in there and someone who was not. Bernie Sanders was already in Congress, in the Senate. He was already there. So Bernie knew, this don't work out. I just go back to being a senator. When you look at people like Cornel West, when you look at people like RFK Jr., they're not in there. Marianne Williamson is not in there. And though I may not agree with some of their, campaigns, the policies that they have, or some of the positions that they have, this is different. This is a different kind of time. But you have to have a movement, which means we have to feel comfortable enough continuing doing what we're doing during that campaign once that campaign ends. That's important. Now, this piece here, the second part of this interview, I think is a little bit more personal. So he starts off asking Ice Cube, why did you decide to do this interview? Because people are going to come after you. Listen to this.
So why would you be doing this of all interviews? I mean, you could do an interview with anyone. You're doing an interview with me. Obviously, you're going to take abuse for doing that. Why would you do that?
Because I think it's silly not to talk to people. I think whether we agree or not,
right?
That has nothing to do with it. It's this is what it's all about. Let's talk about it. Let's Let's debate. And you know, I've been shut out.
Wait, that sounds like right-wing extremism and whataboutism.
But I've been shut out. You know, some platforms will not have me on.
Why?
They don't like that I'm, you know, an independent thinker. I'm not part of the herd. I'm not part of the go along to get along gang, so to speak. So, you know, I'm an outsider. And so, you know, I'm not.
Gatekeepers. I told you, especially in media, gatekeepers. Oh, don't bring him on. He doesn't have the same narrative that we have. We can't have people listening to the rhetoric coming out of his mouth.
I'm part of the club. So I have to go places for one that I'm welcome and where I can voice my opinion without somebody, you know, saying I'm a bad person and that they never want to have me on their platform again.
What platforms have banned you?
I've been, you know, I tried to go on The View. They didn't have me on The View.
Why?
Well, a few of the guests just really didn't like where I was coming from. So
apparently The View was only their view. Apparently the only view that the View cast members want you to hear is just theirs. I've said this for a while about that show. I told you, like, the way that they would treat certain people that came on, the people who were candidates that wanted to do something for the people, they were really nasty to people like Tulsi Gabbard, Marianne. This was 2020. They were very nasty to people like Tulsi Gabbard, Marianne Williamson, Andrew Yang when he first came on. Then they started to switch towards, you know, more favorable towards him later on. They were very nasty to Bernie Sanders when he came on. When Joe Biden came on, they were all smiles. They're not neutral. And the way they treat people is very different. But the fact that they wouldn't let Ice Cube come on, really? You see that? They don't like some of the views that he has.
Or a few of the hosts, I mean. So that's what I was told by the producers. You know, I don't know if the producers was just copping out and using some of the hosts to not have me come on and explain myself, but
you'd be a good booking for them.
I've been on there before.
Yeah.
You know, it's just when I've became an independent thinker, when I've, you know, I'm not, you know, I don't follow their brand of politics, I guess.
But if you can't think for yourself, then you're not really free, are you?
No, you're not. You're not. But I've been excluded. I've been excluded on Oprah. You know,
on Oprah.
On Oprah, yeah, I've been excluded. Yeah, man.
I would think you'd be the person Oprah would want to promote. I mean, you grew up in South Central. You were successful at a young age. You have dignity. You say what you think. Like, I thought that was the goal.
Me too.
No.
You know, I don't know what it is, but you know, several of my. You know, I had a movie called Barbershop, you know.
Yeah, I remember.
That I wasn't invited to participate with the cast. I produced a show called Black White, and it was a very controversial show. And once again, they had the whole cast on, but I wasn't invited. And so I don't know. I don't know what that's
on Oprah's show.
Yeah, so I don't know what that's. Really
but Oprah's.
Ice Cube don't know what it's about, but I know what it's about. And I'm just going to keep it real. Oprah likes to promote certain types of Black people. Oprah, she's very particular about Black guests that she did choose to come onto the show. And for you guys that don't know, it was her company. Harpo's her company. Okay, it's Oprah spelled backwards. But she was very particular about that. So just because Oprah was Black and you're Black doesn't mean that Oprah saw you as the right type of Black person to bring onto the Oprah Winfrey Show, because the majority of people that watched Oprah's show were not Black Americans. The majority of people that watched Oprah's show were white Americans. So she brought on Black people that she felt would be favorable to that audience. And that is why she didn't bring on Ice Cube. I mean, Ice Cube is pretty, he's pretty vocal, right? Now, some will say, well, she brought on Jay-Z. Jay-Z kind of changed over time. When she brought Jay-Z on, it's not like when he first started, when he first blew up. She brought Jay-Z on after he became a businessman and he started mingling in the same kind of spaces with the same kind of people that she mingled with. That's when she brought Jay-Z on. So just think about that for a second. She bougie. Just let's keep it real.
It's obviously a saintly, godlike figure who's revered by all decent people. Why would she exclude you?
I really don't know. You know, that's something that I would love to find out. But I can't tell you, you know, if there's a single thing that I've done or said to her.
Have you noticed that it is more controversial to criticize Oprah than to burn the American flag?
Really?
Seems that way. I've never heard anybody criticize Oprah. Do you think it's political or do you think it's deeper than that? I mean, you're not like a right winger.
Tucker, you're going to have to get out more often because there are people who criticize Oprah. There are people, a lot of people do criticize Oprah. Maybe not on mainstream media, but we'll have to get him to listen to some of the YouTube channels. There's a couple YouTube channels that focus on celebrity, like they talk about celebrity news and celebrity entertainment, and they just cover that. They don't get into the politics and stuff like that. And they have some things to say about Oprah. So.
No.
You don't even seem that political.
No, I'm not really. I'm pretty much, you know, just want to do right by the people, you know. So if that comes through political means, that comes through the private sector, wherever it comes, you know, I'm down to work with whoever's down to do something right for the people.
So I remember reading you say something along the lines of, I didn't vote for Trump, I'm not a Trump voter. You actually attacked Trump at one point, but you were willing to meet with Trump. Do you think that crossed a line?
I think some people didn't like that, but I think it's idiotic. You know, enemies meet.
Right.
You know, they talk. I'm pretty sure there's some communication between Russia and the Ukraine right now. Somebody's on the phone talking to somebody, trying to come up with a solution. So that's the only way we're gonna work this out. You know, I know when the talking stops, the fighting starts. You know, a lot of people, they, you know, think I'm a, you know, Republican. I'm a right winger. Just because I was willing to speak to the Trump administration, I mean, and I was willing to speak with the Biden administration as well, you know.
Yeah, but they left that part out. And that's another thing I noticed too. Like, even when he had that interview on CNN with Chris Cuomo, he said, I reached out to both. We reached out to both. You know, people would just leave that part out, that he reached out to the Biden administration and only for. Country has become more and more polarized as I get older. It's just something that I've noticed. And yes, we do have like this two-party system in this country. I don't agree with it. I think we should have as many parties as possible. I think it's ridiculous that people have to be, you know, pigeonholed into these two parties. I think that's stupid. Expand your mind. Okay. But I have noticed as time has gone on, since the very first time that I was old enough to vote for the president of the United States, I've watched this country become more and more polarized, especially in reference to, you know, red team, blue team. And meanwhile, the class war continues. Meanwhile, poor people are still poor. Meanwhile, people still have difficulty putting food on the table. Meanwhile, tuition continues to increase. And a lot of times these things are just, they're overlooked because people are so focused on which team they are a part of. And I believe that's on purpose. I really do. I believe the United States, based on what I've seen, you know, as I've grown up, I feel like the United States is a crumbling empire. We are not, this great, powerful empire that we used to be back during the time when my parents talked about, like, you would have a company car if you worked for a company. Like, we're not that powerful empire that we used to be anymore. And it's crumbling. And I feel like this polarization between these two parties, I feel like it's on purpose to keep us divided so that we're not focusing on the economic issues in this country, and we're not focusing on the top 1% that are actually above all of us. If you think about it, they want our attention diverted.
Have you?
One guy in the administration, but it didn't go anywhere. It was basically a, take my temperature kind of call. We'll get to it. But they never got to it or never planned to. Matter of fact, the guy left the administration. So, after talking to him for a year or so, he was gone, and then, we were left really with no one there.
For a whole year, those talks went on.
To continue the conversations.
What do you think of Biden?
I don't think he's given the people who put him in exactly what they thought they were going to get from him.
But his most loyal voters, according to the polls anyway, are black voters, particularly black women.
Mm-hmm.
And those numbers don't seem to change. So no matter what happens or doesn't happen. So do you expect they ever will change?
Did people actually believe that they were going to get those things from Joe Biden, or were people more willing to vote for Joe Biden because they were so fearful of getting another 4 years of Donald Trump? I think that's the question that needs to be asked, because I know me personally, I didn't expect Biden to deliver. Some people are going around saying, look at all the things that he's done. Yeah, those people aren't poor. But I really didn't expect him to deliver. So for me, I didn't really have any disappointment. But I wonder about that. I wonder if those people actually really did expect him to do all these things that he said that he would do. Or if it's just more so, fear. Maybe they did not expect him to do those things, but they just didn't want Trump again. I think that'll be a very telling question come 2024.
Whether they become independents and not vote for anybody who's not bringing it. It's like people want your vote. They have to do something to earn it. If they don't earn it, why are you going down there and pulling that lever?
Because the other side hates you. That's the pitch they make. We may suck, but the other side hates you.
You suppose.
And who's doing the voting? Because see, this is the other thing. Again, you have to remember who usually goes to the polls to vote. It's usually people who are over the age of 60, right? It's usually people who are over the age. Now, yes, there have been moments where, Gen Z has come out with record numbers. There have been moments where, millennials have come out with record numbers. But for the most part, the majority of the voting population are people who already have Medicare. So running on something like Medicare for All, what Bernie Sanders did for those people, there's kind of like, I already got Medicare. And I know this because when we were organizing for the Marches for Medicare for All, and we were asking people if we could share the flyers with them, there was a couple people that told us, like, I already have Medicare. So you see what I mean? Like, those are the people, like, a lot of the things that Bernie was running on benefited younger people. And that's why I know one of the things he wanted to include was hearing aids. And I think, was it dental or vision? I think hearing. Anyway, I know he wanted to include hearing in another one, but most of his policies more so benefited people that were not eligible for Medicare. So that's why if you already have all those things, if you already got your pension, you did your time. I don't want to refer to work as doing your time, but if you already have your pension, you already got your Social Security, and you already have Medicare, then to you, You might just be voting just out of civic duty. Maybe you don't really need all those things to happen that those candidates are running on. This is something to think about.
The dance with the person you brought.
Yeah.
You know? And the person that brought you to the dance, you guys are supposed to dance together. And if that doesn't happen, you got to go find another dancing partner before the night is up and the music stops.
What do you think of Kamala Harris?
I mean, obviously she's a great politician to be able to become the vice president of the country. I don't know how effective she is at her job.
I wouldn't call her a great politician. I would just say that she's rubbed elbows with the right people for long enough time, and she's been in the right spaces to get to where she is. Google Willie Brown. So I disagree with Ice Cube on that one. I don't think she's a great politician. She just met the right people at the right time and climbed up that ladder. Willie Brown.
What's your view of the police at this point?
It's the same, you know. They it really is, you know. It's like looking at, like, what's your view of the military? Like, they're the military. They're always gonna be the military. If I asked you this in 1946, you'd be like, they're the military.
Yeah.
So it's a fraternity. It's an organization that does things a certain way. And I think their philosophy sometimes is detrimental to the people they're serving, because I think cops have a win and make it home philosophy. Win whatever battles you have in the street, make it home at night. And that's actually the most important thing. And everything else, people's rights, doing things the right way, you know, being totally fair and square all the time and not, you know, being a little aggressive, you know, all that comes second to win the encounter, make it home at night. And
you can do everything right and still lose your life. That's the thing. And, you know, he knows about that. You can do everything right and still lose your life.
You can't really fault somebody for thinking that way as a police officer, but that's the philosophy. So everything else comes second to that. So guy might not care if he violated your rights. He's gonna win this encounter. He's gonna make it home tonight. And that's all that matters. And sometimes I think that's what we see is an organization hell-bent on winning, and not a fraternity or organization hell-bent on upholding the law and doing everything right or by the book, so to speak.
Yep.
Yeah.
That part right there, what he just said about how they approach the situation versus how we may approach the situation. The fact that their main focus is that they are going to win this encounter. Let's think about this for a second. What Ice Cube is saying, they're going to win this encounter and they're going to make it home that night. Whether or not you make it home that night doesn't really count. That's something I think that we need to talk more about that. I think we need to have a longer discussion about that. I might have to do a panel about that. That they make sure they're putting their life first.
And it's just the nature of that fraternity.
Maybe of organizations.
Yeah, you know, it's they come with a philosophy, and you know, you can try to buck it if you want to, but more than likely they're gonna get you out the way and stay in formation.
Yep. That's deep. If there's anything to take away from this interview, please take away that part of the discussion. I'm not going to play the entire interview because we can't be here all night. Let's just keep it real. But I do want to show you, if you want to see the rest of the interview, if you go to Tucker Carlson's page, it's episode 11, and it's Ice Cube, X Tucker. This X thing is weirding me out still. Ice Cube X Tucker, the studio interview. So we got to 9 minutes and 49 seconds. So if you're wondering where to pick up from. But that is very telling. Now, like I told you, he's already getting criticized for this. And here's an example. This is from Brittany. Ice Cube doing interviews with racist ass Tucker Carlson and driving him through the hood for what? For who? How embarrassing. These are just a few. This is just one of the comments. Just one. There's a whole bunch, and you couldn't even bring him to his family's home because Ice Cube's daddy wasn't going to have any of that. And some people fought back. Like Sibum said, nah, Tucker's cool. You're just being racist. Interview with him, cool. Riding him through the hood boggles my mind. Yeah. So as you can imagine, he's already getting a lot of clap back from people. But again, like we've talked about this before, right? The gatekeeping, people who tell you who you can and cannot talk to. And in reference to the people that have that criticism about Ice Cube bringing Tucker Carlson to his old neighborhood, or even having this discussion with Tucker Carlson, how would they have felt about when Fred Hampton approached the Young Patriots? Because remember, they originally, what happened? Originally, he said, we'd like you to join forces to be a part of this coalition with the Black Panthers, Rainbow Coalition, but you cannot still fly the Confederate flag and you have to denounce racism. So how would those people have felt about Fred Hampton choosing to make that first step to talk to the Young Patriots? Something to think about. All right. Thank you for the super chat, FWC. No one mentions how the Rand Corp invented the Ukraine proxy war with Nazis, briefly saying how the U.S. wants World War III isn't enough. Nuclear war means we all die. Yes, FWC. We've talked about this multiple times on this channel. That is not the only story in the world. Dr. Nick says she's rubbed more than just elbows. Beaver says she's rubbed other things too. Oh boy. Oh man, I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. And then I think I have to switch Tennessee with Texas. I forgot what happened here. Thank you for the tip tonight on Rockfin Jim. Bingo on times have changed. Nailed it, Sabs. Thank you so much for that. Now I am looking at and I see that I have Texas. I have Texas. Did I pull up Tennessee? I did pull up Tennessee. Tennessee. I'll have to do finish Tennessee on Sunday. And I need to pull up. I'm sorry, guys. I'm talking to myself here. I need to pull up Texas. Tennessee. Take me to another place. Take me to another plan. Let me forget all that. Let me understand your plan. Tennessee. Okay, I got Texas. All right. We'll finish Tennessee on Sunday. Sorry, guys. That was a group called Arrested Development. Does everybody remember them? They were actually really good. I wonder what happened to them. Take me to another place. Let me understand your plan. All right, Texas. We are continuing with ballot initiatives. Let's bring in the big state of Texas, where the stars at night are big and bright. In Texas, voters do not have the right and the option to place their own initiatives on the ballot to pass and repeal state laws and amend the Texas Constitution on their own. Voters only have the power to ratify into the Texas Constitution what the legislature puts before them. through what is called a legislative referred constitutional amendment, aka state legislator initiative. Number 1, Texas Proposition 1, Property Tax Limit Reduction for Elderly and Disabled Residents Amendment. A yes vote supported amending the state constitution to authorize the state legislature to reduce the property tax limit for school maintenance and operation taxes imposed on the homesteads of elderly or disabled residents to reflect any tax rate reduction enacted by law from the preceding tax year. This measure was ratified by 87.03%. What this means is that homeowners who are disabled or 65 years old and older can qualify for having school district property taxes capped or frozen. But when lawmakers in 2019 passed legislation to offset rising property values with lower school district tax rates for all homeowners, those adjustments did not account for elderly and disabled homeowners whose property taxes were already frozen. Under Prop 1, those homeowners could qualify for those additional reductions in 2023 if the measure passes. Now, that's coming from Senator Paul Betancourt, a Houston Republican who wrote the legislation calling for the constitutional amendment. All right, so it says the frozen value unfreezes and then refreezes lower each year. Who supported this? All Republicans. So you'll see Governor Greg Abbott is one of the ones who supported it. One of the arguments was, to use plain English, this proposition will compress the tax rate for school maintenance and operations, M&O, for homeowners with a 65 plus or disabled exemption, just as HB 3 already did for other homeowners in 2019. Your tax rates for school taxes are going down because we passed HB 3. This will help seniors receive the same benefit. There was no opposition to this ballot measure, and there was no money that was spent to support or oppose it. Okay. Proposition 2, increase the homestead exemption for school district property taxes amendment. A yes vote supported increasing the homestead exemption for school district property taxes from $25,000 to $40,000. This measure was ratified by 84.95%. What it means: currently, homeowners can subtract $25,000 from their home's value before school tax rates are levied. Prop 2 would increase that deduction to $40,000 in value. The measure could save the average homeowner about $175 on their annual property tax bill. Again, that's coming from Paul Betancourt. And it said this would go into effect this year. What's the impact for schools? Texas is now able to reimburse school districts for the lost property tax revenue, so schools would not lose funding. School districts with higher property wealth per student would also see lower payments into a state fund known as recapture, meant to support districts with lower property values. What's the impact for Texans? The measures would lower school district property taxes for qualifying homeowners, but some homeowners could still see increased tax bills because of the property value growth. Betancourt said he expects increased tax bills for those with homestead exemptions to be in single digits. Homeowners who have a case can also protest their higher home values with their local appraisal districts. The propositions would not help renters, so this piece is important, who have also seen rising housing costs, nor business and or other property owners, because homestead exemptions apply only to homeowner primary residence. This is interesting. Actually, I'm going to copy this link. Balls. Copy this link. I don't know why it won't let me to copy the whole link. Anyway, I'm going to put this in the chat so you guys can, those of you that live in Texas, you can actually see that article. You can read that article when you have time. Who supported this? Republicans. Governor Greg Abbott, as you can see, is one of the supporters. organizations, Texas Public Policy Foundation and Texas Taxpayers and Research Association. One of the arguments, the additional proposal, Prop 2, is much shorter and easy to understand. It proposes an increase in the resident's homestead exemption from property taxes for public school purposes for $25K to $40K. This is a badly needed adjustment, and I was proud to also co-author this legislation with Senator Betancourt last year. Who opposed it? One of the opposing arguments was from Ross Ramsey, who said the homeowner's exemption increase is expensive. It would cost the state almost $2 billion over the next 5 years. It's straight up bid for homeowners who vote. It doesn't do anything for renters or for commercial and industrial property owners in the way that a cut in property tax rates would be. There was no money spent to support or oppose this measure. Here's a note here from friend of the show, Roger Meadows. Texas surpasses 17 million registered voters. Early voting starts Monday for 2022 primary election. That is the title of the link below. Yet despite both of these measures being overwhelmingly ratified by 84 to 87%, the total number who voted was 1.2 million to 1.3 million. 17 million plus registered to vote earlier that year, but only 1.3 million vote. What would the turnout have been if Texas legislator put it before the voters on the day of the midterm election? What were they so afraid of that they had to not only feel they had to put both these measures on the ballot, not on a general election day, but in a special election of May 7th? Yet, peep this. Early voting was from March 1st to March 19th, and the primary runoff was May 24th, yet the special election for this was on May 7th. That doesn't strike anyone as odd. What about this thing was so consequential that they had to sneak it under the radar? That is a very good point, Roger Meadows, and all I have to say to that is the stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. Maybe that's the answer. I don't know. I do not know, but that is a really good question. But thank you so much, guys. Guys, I am heading out. I do have a really cool event tomorrow. We're doing a mutual aid event in Boston. I think a lot of you probably know about this by now, but some of you actually may not know. Mutual aid barbecue here in Boston. This is going to be in JP. That's Jamaica Plain for the newbies. And I'm just going to pull up the flyer for you to show you. There it is. The stars at night are big and bright down in the heart of Texas. Oh no, that song is stuck in my head. All right, let me pull this up. Yay, tomorrow, guys. If you're in the Boston area, feel free to come out. This is our event. I was thanking Gabriel there for the $20. We were able to raise a lot of money thanks to you guys. You guys really did help us. That's Boston Community Mutual Aid Barbecue tomorrow at First Church. That is 6 Elliott Street, JP. It'll be cool. This is actually where the Workers Strike Back event launched in Boston. That is from noon to 2 p.m. Eastern time. So we're going to have some fun there. And it is first come, first serve, but I think we'll be fine, like food wise. Like I've worked with this caterer before, like many times. So I think we'll be fine food wise, but come get some barbecue, meet some peoples and say some heys, say what's ups. And the other thing for tomorrow, don't forget, is the Labor Organizing Summit at RBN. I just want to share that thumbnail here. Kapow. Tomorrow, don't forget, guys, huge event that is from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern time. Chris Smalls and Shama Sawan and also Jill Stein will be headlining this event. You're going to see UPS Teamsters that are going to be a part of this summit. I also have someone coming on from the New York Postal Service as well. We're going to be talking to different people from different industries. We'll be streaming on all of these platforms that you see listed here. So whenever throughout the day, feel free to jump in and enjoy that message. So yeah, that's going to be a good time tomorrow. Don't miss it. All right, guys. Other than that, I do have to get going. In fact, I have to get prepped for tomorrow. So I am going to be going to bed at some point. I'll take that comment on Rockfin and then I got to head out. Oh, I said that one already. Yeah, I said that one. I said, thanks, Jim, for the tip on Rockfin. Bingo on times have changed. Nailed it, Sabs. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for the super chat, Baza, for some shrimp on the Barbie. Oh, that's so cute. Barbecue. That's cute. Thank you so much for that. All right, guys, I'm heading out. I hope you have a great weekend. Check out the Labor Summit tomorrow from 10 to 10. If you're in the Boston area, come swing by, come grab yourself a plate and say, what's up? Other than that, have a good night. Keep up the fight.